Welcome to Transformed, a podcast that traverses the diverse landscape of the Indian education system. Together, we embark on a journey to uncover the untold stories, the shared struggles, and the unique perspectives of educators and students across the socioeconomic spectrum. In India, our schools vary from the elite, where fees soar to 50,000 rupees per student per month, to those supported by the states offering absolutely free education. Yet, within this spectrum, common threads of challenges weave through the corridors of learning and teaching. As we traverse this expansive landscape, we'll delve into the complexities administrators, teachers, and students face. From the plush classrooms to the humble learning spaces, administrators grapple with the ever present challenge of providing quality education within budgetary constraints. Teachers, the unsung heroes of our educational saga, navigate through the diverse classrooms, tackling various issues that transcend economic boundaries, trying to innovate with new teaching methodologies, and trying to manage classroom discipline. In this podcast, we aim to bridge these differences, foster a space where we appreciate the diversity and the differences, but acknowledge the similarities and celebrate the shared commitment of these educators to education. Transformed is not just a podcast, it's a forum for dialogue, understanding, and collective growth. Join us as we explore the education kaleidoscope of India, one story at a time. Welcome, Richa ma'am. I'm absolutely delighted to have you as the first speaker on Transformed, which is a podcast that traverses the Indian education landscape. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for inviting me, Vinati.
Just for our audience, I want to introduce Dr. Richa Prakash Ghosh as the principal of the Delhi Public School in Jaipur. She likes to be introduced as an educator, learner, and a quester who believes that we can learn each day and grow each day. She has completed her undergraduate studies from Lady Shri Ram College, New Delhi, and holds a doctoral degree in history. She has been in the education trajectory for over 20 years and is known for her leadership skills. Finally, where our worlds meet, she believes in leading with social empathy and distributive leadership to empower other educators and students to ideate, collaborate at different levels, and to leverage the possibilities of a better tomorrow. She thinks if we have gratitude, empathy, and mindfulness, that we can all truly be a gem. Thank you, ma'am. I'm very privileged to have you here.
Thank you for inviting me once again.
Richa, ma'am, we'll begin with motivation. This is, the theme of our discussion today. And I want to ask you, as a young woman, when you studied at LSR, what motivated you to go into the career, as education as a career, basically?
So I would say, Vinati, that when I was studying there, the professors that I had, the teachers I had, they were very inspiring. They were so devoted, they were so self-motivated, and they had given it all. Their life was about how to provide a very conducive environment to all the students that were there. So it was very inclusive, I'll say. They were very inclusive in their own ways. They were very conscious and remarkable educators over there.
Ma'am, tell me a little bit more about these inclusive behaviors before, I sort of fast forward to your current role as principal. Just as a reflection on what inclusivity meant then, what is this conducive environment behavior of a teacher? Because at this point you're still a student, but they're inspiring you. So what were these behaviors?
So one was we all had to go through this, we had to choose NCC or NSS, and they were very encouraging. And it was not just about, completing your hours and completing the task that was assigned, but it was something which they wanted to bring in as a part of the social empathy. Your own contribution, if you're doing, like I joined the NSS, so National Social Service. So there were others who joined the NCC. So for them, the idea was not just the working hours that you have to complete, but you have to make a difference. And the way they would treat everybody around, there were children in LSR also who were coming from different backgrounds, very different backgrounds. And they had made it to LSR, and there was no differentiation. And yet they recognized it, and they worked on it, but it was very subtle. and it was very, they were very sensitive to it. I think that is something which perhaps was one of the motivations, something which was very subtle in me also. I wouldn't say that now that we discuss it today, I'll say that I have gone back to that time and realized that yes, these were very driven teachers, very, I mean, to name a few whom I remember, Mrs. Madhok was there, Miss G. Arunima was there. Uh, Amazing. It was a Hindi faculty who was very inspiring. She was, they were bang on over there, out there every day. One of the faculty members had a accident, and yet she called us in her home. She invited us to, conduct the classes. She had one leg up, so, and yet she was very, there was no pain. She was just very pained that, she's not been able to complete the syllabus in the right time, the right pace, and we should not be harmed. So I think that was that.
That's incredible. So other teachers and inspiring teachers motivated you, and there seemed to be a bit of a connection between social contribution along with the idea of your student life, which they encouraged and got you involved with. So it was not just about a personal journey, but really, what ethos you're building around contributing to society, and all of that
True,
kind of inspired you to
true.
take the journey. Richa ma'am, tell me a little bit more about your role. You are the principal of DPS Jaipur. It's a well-known
Right.
um, chain of schools, I would say.
Um,
Please tell me about your current role, and in that role, how many teachers you sort of manage, and then
mhm.
we go into have a discussion around their motivation and the challenges that you may face.
True. So we are almost near about 200 of us educators here, and it's a big group of teachers to keep motivated. And the challenges are largely, the teachers also face the challenges around their lives. They also have personal lives, so which is very important to recognize, and especially when we are talking about education, because education is all about being very mindful for the other. So I think as school leaders, we need to lead from the front, be out there for them personally. So I really wouldn't call it a challenge, but yes, these are things, which come up in the lives, and you have to support. You need to support your team. Only then can we all, lead our children in the correct direction.
You're
So
making a very interesting connection, ma'am, that, in rather than seeing yourself as this teacher who's in charge of this sort of administrator that's in charge of student outcomes first, you're really seeing, where is my team of educators in their own well-being, and how am I
true.
supporting them? And then there's sort of this automatic transfer uh, to student outcomes and, the entire school climate. So that's very an interesting way to kind of
Mhm.
see your role. It's like your workforce, which has to first really be emboldened.
True.
Ma'am, what do you think about teacher motivation and its relationship to student engagement?
So, teachers, of course, they are the prime interface between the students, the parents. They are the main, face of the school. So, there is, I would say, a very, very direct relationship, between the two, because a motivated teacher will actually foster a very positive classroom environment, and that will actually enhance the student engagement, because
Mhm.
a teacher who may be disconnected will never be able to bring out the learning outcomes. So a teacher has to be very inspired, and an inspiring person, a person whom the children aspire to be one day, a very enthusiastic person,
Mhm.
to be, able to make learning very, very enjoyable. And once it's enjoyable, it is also impactful. So the teacher's passion, and I would say the dedication, can actually contribute, because we absorb so much from our environment. Like, I didn't realize I absorbed so much from the educators who have taught me. So similarly, in a very subtle way, in a very subdued way, it is the children who are constantly looking up to you, watching you. So, that passion and dedication of the teacher can actually contribute, I think, very significantly to their participation and to the overall academic success of the children.
Ma'am, that's so interesting. It's an observational thing, right? It's not even, you're not even talking about subject matter excellence. You're just saying that the passion and energy and habits and persona of a teacher, her own personal or his own personal energy to the classroom makes a big difference to student engagement. But the reality is that in sort of any large system, right, there was a study done in 2001 or two around teacher motivation, and they interviewed teachers and they ran some, sort of statistics and regression. But the answer really was that some were intrinsically motivated, some were highly motivated, and then there was a lot of teachers that perhaps were over a period of time fatigued or not that interested. And as a leader of that sort of large, those scenarios, how do you grapple with teacher motivation? What do you do as an institution to keep them motivated?
There is no manual on parenting. There is no manual on, having the best learning outcomes uh, for the students. So similarly, there is no manual for the teachers also. How do you keep people motivated? Yes, these are challenges. You have to understand that, like the way students are different. You have teachers also who are differentiated.
Mhm.
Something motivates somebody. A word of praise will motivate another person, and a word of, you know, reprimand and followed by a praise may motivate another person. When
Mhm.
you recognize and reprimand at the same time, some people, people react differently, act differently. So you need to invest that kind of time to build a connect, which happens over a long period of time. And yet, if you are observant, and I think all the school leaders who are in the position are very, observing people. They have to observe, and that is very, very essential, because you have to provide a certain kind of an autonomy for the teacher to work. Because if you give that kind of freedom, the freedom to make mistakes also, so long as it's not a blunder, that I think leads to a certain level of mastery in them. And if essentially it will lead to a certain kind of a purpose for them to fulfill it for themselves. So I think that is something which becomes quite essential to provide that kind of environment. And it takes a journey. It's a journey, it's a continuum. It cannot be achieved for everyone. As I said, teachers are also very different. So we have to focus on differentiated teachers, just the way we focus on, differentiated students.
Yes, I love this sort of commonality. I mean, we often do trainings around motivation. And the first thing that we try to say to people is no two brains are similar, and therefore no two reward structures or why you do something truly matters. It's not going to be the same. And in sort of the corporate world, people have these two guardrails. There's reward and there's recognition. And within the school systems, I think, a bit of a challenge because the reward is not necessarily directly linked to performance at all points, like you do sort of, incentives and structure. So I think this idea that as a leader, you are observing so carefully uh, in a nuanced manner what a teacher may need versus another is remarkable. But institutionally, ma'am, what do you do to sort of raise everybody's motivation level up? What are the levers that you have that you can deploy so that teachers remain motivated?
So one is, you have to very much follow their journey and, acknowledge their contributions. There's got to be a time when you acknowledge, and you acknowledge it in real time. You don't have to have an ACR for it every time, an appraisal form to be filled to acknowledge. As
Mhm.
and when it happens, these small things should be acknowledged. I think nobody will ever say that I don't like appreciation. I've had an overdose of it.
Mhm.
So that is something I would say would really, really help. Help them sort out the problem. Problem solving is very important.
Mhm.
There are times when the problem remains as it is because nobody has bothered to solve it. And that becomes a very big obstacle for the teacher, and at times they feel as if it's an impediment they can never ever overcome.
Give
Then
me
of
an
course it's
example.
very
Give me an example of solving
right.
a problem, a complex problem for your teacher.
So one is like, they struggle at times with classroom management.
Mm-hmm.
They also intrinsically want that the student learning outcome is above average. The performance index is above for everyone. It should not be just the first two and the first three. So when we are looking at that, we have to help them with the strategies. We just can't say that you come with that defined role of a teacher, you should know better. Yes, fair enough. The person has to know. But then if the person is facing this impediment, we need to provide those strategies there and then to
Mm-hmm.
work together and to see, maybe that strategy works for me and that strategy may not work for that person. But you need to help them come to a solution. And each time providing a solution is also not a good idea. You need to help them, find a solution
Mm-hmm.
together. And that can be together. That helps them build in a lot of confidence in you also, that you're not just here to tell them what to do and instruct them or reprimand them, but you're also here to sort of walk with them,
Mm-hmm.
walk the talk also, and walk along with them, collaborate with them. It
Mm-hmm.
is not us and them, it is only us.
Yes. Oh, thank you, ma'am. That's very inspiring. And this leads to my sort of concern. I when I was a student, I was complaining about one teacher to another, and I liked this teacher and I didn't like this teacher. So I'll acknowledge that as a student that we also make up our minds so quickly, right? You remembered that teacher, so you spoke of. I can remember teachers I liked and I didn't, and vice versa. And this teacher of mine said to me, "Have you ever given it thought from her perspective?" And I was foxed at that question. And she says, this is not a race that we are running where my effort results are visible to me. My effort goes by how successful my class is, what you were mentioning. But I have no
Mhm.
control on your effort, on your attention, on your engagement. So, in your mind, how do teachers get too hard on themselves? Um, how do they navigate this varied effort, varied attention span of students in this classroom management?
So I think there are almost two questions in this, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
So yes, we are able to manage because I mean that's something which we are here for. That's our bandwidth
Yeah.
of managing differentiated children. They are different learners. You have visual, auditory, different types of learners, and you have to recognize that you have to have engagement of these children in different group activities, give them different strategies to work, different projects to work. And that is how you try to build a culture of togetherness.
Mhm.
So that once again, it is not even they are not in that pursuit of snatching somebody else's dream, but just finding their way towards their own role and their own success. Because teachers usually take student failure very personally. I've seen here, in my school when they are, they have very fallen faces if things don't go right with a student
Mhm.
because they feel that sense of responsibility and that accountability by themselves.
Mhm.
So, somewhere they look at these, of course, they don't have control over the student's academic progress, whatever is the personal environment for the child, but things beyond their control, yet they want to give in their best through their effort. There is counseling, and nowadays in the 21st century, every teacher is a counselor. You
Mhm.
just don't need to have 5 or 10. How many counselors can you have in a school? So everybody has to imbibe those skills of good communication, better communication, a communication which is a two-way, an active listening, silent understanding. So those are the ways I think they try to overcome this differentiation and yet acknowledge that children will be different.
Yes. So their well-being is at the heart of this, because if they take student failure so personally, and there are still realms out of their control. I hope that teachers look after their well-being as much as they share that space of responsibility for their students as well. Ma'am, in your mind, what fears do students and teachers have in common? What hopes do they have in common?
I think both mutually want the best. Children want the best for themselves. Teachers definitely have that sort of an investment in their children.
Mhm.
So, that vision is the same. They want the children to have the true understanding and meaning of education, because in the end, you need to be a good human being, however trite it may sound, but that is very essential. So that is a journey, like, when you have your alumni come back, they never talk about only grades. They talk about how helpful this person was. This was such a sharing person, such a kind boy, such a kind girl. She was so helpful. She was a cultural in charge, and then she took up this thing very seriously. Initially, she was very hesitant. So these are stories which make up, their successes also. So the fear of, I think this is what they more or less share in common, that what if, they don't, uh, they won't be able to fulfill their own aspirations, the teacher towards the student and the student towards themselves, and also about their school and their teachers. Because when that student is also, like you said, student is also, you were invested in one teacher, so you were very interested in and wanted to do the best. So when the student becomes invested in a teacher, it makes a very big difference.
Mhm.
That is their, that hope of common success.
Ma'am, what role does continuous professional development play in keeping teachers updated, energized? What do you see that as a role?
Continuous professional development is something which is most pertinent in this field, because teachers are truly the nation builders. So if we are not updated and upskilled and upscaled, our assets are other, then we'll become liabilities. And if we become liabilities, then we will not be able to create that 21st century skill sets in our children. So this provides them with a lot of new perspectives, get to know a lot of tools and the kind of strategies that you need to use, need to imbibe and absorb to have, and enhance your teaching skills. So it also helps them, I will say, prevent stagnation, because after a while you will stagnate if you don't. And I think NEP 2020, which has made it mandatory, has actually recognized in its own way, in a very subtle way, that teachers are the game changers. So
Yes.
if I want to see the change in the student learning outcome, I have to first begin from the teacher. Because if the teacher is not, staying alert and, aware about the latest trends and the kind of evolution there has been in the educational standards, it will, not help the teacher to be able to become effective in addressing the diverse needs of the students. Nowadays, career guidance and counseling is it's a very, very crucial area of interest for the students. You need to help them understand how to build your portfolio, what will add value to you, what are the kind of activities you can involve. So all this, this field study, how is it helpful, what kind of application it will provide you. So, this kind of engaging with their own professionalism, I think, will help them foster a sense of a professional fulfillment, because you have to be a lifelong
I
learner.
think I'm going to go away with this word. Teachers are the game changer. You are echoing the NEP, and funnily enough, I had got this quote that I thought I'd just share with you, and you are echoing that. It's from the NEP. It says, "Teachers are truly teachers truly shape the future of our children, and therefore the future of our nation. It is because this is the noblest role that the teacher in India was the most respected member of society. Only the very best and the most learned become teachers." And it then goes on to sort of articulate that role and then poses a challenge, really, I think, to all of us. When it says the quality of teacher education, recruitment, deployment, service condition, and empowerment of teachers is not where it should be. And consequently, the quality and motivation of teachers, and this is what you're saying, does not reach the desired standards. So this engagement with their own professionalism and sort of systemic, that it's not getting there yet, but that's where we have to go. And then it says the high respect for teachers and high status of teachers' profession must be restored. So that is to inspire the best to enter the profession. And I found this the most inspiring sort of statement within the NEP. There are, of course, beautiful aspects of the document that we wish we can almost embed. But, I'm hearing again, you say, look, teachers are the game changer. They have to engage with their own professionalism. And they are the lifelong learners as well. So how do you envision doing that for the next couple of years in your leadership position? How do you envision motivating, driving CPD, making sure that teachers engage with their own professionalism?
So, as I said, these are all something which we have to keep on doing. You have to see the value in it. You have to help the teacher understand the value. That why is it that NEP is talking about it? So it is recognizing you today. It is giving you that recognition. Appreciate it. Feel empowered. It is trying to empower you, trying to keep you relevant. There is no AI which can actually replace, in my opinion, any teacher. Because social emotional intelligence is yet not a part of the AI. So, recognize yourself as being important. And that is what the NEP is doing. So if it is making it mandatory that you should have these 50 hours, utilize them well.
Yeah.
See the change.
Yeah. Ma'am, tell me, if you had a young 24-year-old teacher joining DPS Jaipur today, and you also had a teacher who's been teaching for 30 years, what would you tell them? How do they continue to remain engaged? You have at one end a teacher who's gone through a certain system, had a certain educational background, is probably fixed in some ideas, and then you have this sort of new person coming in. What's the message for both of them?
So the message for both of them would be that keep yourself relevant. That is very important. Because if, the education system is keeping you relevant, you have to invest in yourself. And each one to their own. A 24-year-old is as important to be, to understand the value of what they have opted for being a teacher. And similarly, another person who's been in this profession for more than maybe 2 decades. I think, it all starts from the leadership. So in this, the role of the leader becomes very important. So, you can only inspire and they can only aspire for being, invested in themselves if they see you also as a leader, making that difference and walking that talk. Because, there are so many ways of recognizing and appreciating their efforts. That is one very important aspect. A word of appreciation goes a very long way for the right thing, always for the right thing, for the right form of recognition. And, providing these kind of professional development opportunities where you give them these opportunities to go out and also participate, give them that leave to go out and participate in different workshops, come back, share their best practices with their own team of members, I think that is the second part of, inspiring them. Recognize that effort, that they have made maybe for that one pupil, because they are teaching. So sometimes as a performance index, it may not look very striking, but they have known the journey of this child who has, made that difference in academic progress in that subject from, between 8 to 10%, which is a lot to, be able to achieve in a short span of time of 6 months. Recognize their consistent good work. Things, there are so many things teachers have to do. There's one aspect of it is like the attendance register. So if it makes a big difference if you recognize that it's a routine thing, it's a routine task. So if you find the work consistently good, these are small aspects where you can recognize, where you can just, as I said, it has to be in real time.
Yes.
You don't have to wait for a meeting, for a gathering. It's just there because that inspires, that makes the person recognize their value, recognize that every small matters. Every small step towards what you are as a teacher matters.
Mm-hmm.
So, it will start with, for example, me trying to grow my own skills.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Then only can you, really expect that kind of commitment to professional development from the teachers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Ma'am, I want you to speak a little bit more on something that you just said. This recognition of investing in a student to just bring the growth, right? And I've always been fascinated by sort of the top performers are somewhat self-motivated and they do the job. Sometimes in spite the teacher, sometimes despite the teacher, sometimes a combination of those things, right? But the middle, right? That's where it gets so interesting, right? Where you have a student who gets a 6 or 7, and you have that slightly engaged teacher. There are some strategies that they can use to just make that 6 and 7 go to 8 and 9.
True.
Uh, and that's in my mind sort of the game changer uh, in
Mhm.
a teacher investing in growth. How do you, um, I would say, advise or tell teachers to focus on this wonderful middle that can be lifted up? And of course, they have to have a differentiated effort for those that sometimes lag behind. It's not all possible in the same classroom. So how do
It
you,
is.
yeah.
So we have a system of a remediation program as well,
Mm-hmm.
where we don't have the entire class attending it, but
Mm-hmm.
a group of students where every teachers are amazing, you know just like mothers. They are actually, and I will be a little bit gendered here, but
Yes.
yes, just like they are able to when you've been teaching a student for a long time, you recognize that this child is lagging in this particular concept. So
Mm-hmm.
that is where they make a program where those 3 to 4 students are recognized, and then they are given an understanding of that concept, a brush up on that, so to help them, because if your foundation is weak, how will you achieve the next level?
Mm-hmm.
So that is one of the remediation programs that we have, where
Mm-hmm.
the teacher is endeavoring to make that difference, because the child will feel really empowered if they understand that basic, because once you have that basic, it is you have to find that problem, and if you have understood and recognized that, then you can also find a solution. So then that remediation program comes into being. Then we have they make a program which is called the minimum learning levels also, so that the children feel that yes, this much I have understood, that means I have achieved a certain level of success.
Mm-hmm.
I may not be over there, that potential I have not achieved, but at least this proficiency level I have been able to attain.
Mm-hmm.
So and it is a slow and steady progress that is required.
Ma'am, any thoughts on a new generation of young people choosing careers? Uh,
Mhm.
why should they choose to be a teacher?
So I'll give you a very great example. I find it. We have one of our students, our ex-students of DPS Jaipur. He's a teacher in our school.
Okay.
So I did ask him, what made you choose this as a career?
Mm-hmm.
And he just mentioned that, ma'am, my journey here, and I was just highly inspired by the very idea of, being able to contribute at that level in nation building. So the inspiration is to be able to contribute, and something which may be very intangible for now, but
Mm-hmm.
becomes tangible in the form of the same student who is now a teacher. So you have to have that understanding, the children, and I think the family, the community, the society has to bring about that understanding about the role of teachers, which I think post COVID has been very truly recognized,
Mm-hmm.
the kind of role the teacher plays in the lives of the students. And for the youngsters, if if you want to make a difference, yes, this is the place to be. It's very challenging. It's very diverse. It you have bonds which are they go, they transcend any kind of any kind of a defined relationship, because it is something which is very unspeakable.
Mhm.
So it you have to be a very mindful person, I think, to be able to be a teacher, because you have to be so many things to a child. You have to be a mentor, you have to be a counselor, you have to be a parent, you have to have empathy with the situation, yours and theirs, and yet you have to show up every day,
Yeah.
smile.
Yeah.
And when the child smiles back at you, you forget everything.
So it's like you said, it's not tangible. There is a sense of contribution to the nation, and there are these unspeakable sense of belonging and contribution to your students. And it's only over a period of time that those bonds are developed. But for the well-being of an individual who is well disposed to this, it's a beautiful place to be, because you can achieve contribution and have a sense of community, which often in other professional settings may not be available to you, either with your peers or that transformation that you can impact a young child. um, Thank you for that. Richa ma'am, this has been a fascinating conversation. I'm already saying that there'll be a follow-up and we'll discuss some other aspects. Uh, I really respect the work you do. Thank you for always highlighting empathy as a key aspect of both leadership and student engagement. Um, and thank you very much for your contribution to the country in your role as principal today and as a lifelong educator. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you to you and your team.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.